The frigid wind carried Isaiah Wade's reputation long before he ever set foot in a town. Some whispered he had the coldest eyes in all of Wyoming Territory, steel gray like storm clouds that never shed rain. It was 1876, and in the unforgiving landscape of the American frontier, a man's legend often outpaced the truth. They call him Heartless Wade. The barkeep at Bitter Creek Saloon told newcomers, voice hushed as if speaking of the devil himself. Shot 3 men in Laramie without blinking. Never smiles, never drinks, never takes comfort with the ladies. Just drifts from town to town with that colt peacemaker and a soul black as coal. Isaiah heard these whispers as he sat in the corner of the saloon, nursing a cup of coffee gone cold. He didn't bother correcting the stories. At 32, he'd learned that a fearsome reputation kept trouble at arm's length. The years since the war had taught him that silence was safer than trust. His weathered face revealed little as he observed the room from beneath the brim of his hat. Bitter Creek was like a dozen other frontier settlements he'd passed through, dusty, desperate, and dangerous. A place where fortunes could change with a lucky strike or an unlucky draw of cards. "Another coffee, mister?" asked a young server, nervously approaching his table. Isaiah nodded once, his expression unchanged. The server hurried away, nearly tripping over his own feet. Isaiah's hand absently brushed the scar that ran from his jaw to his collarbone, a reminder from Shiloh that some wounds never fully heal. He hadn't planned to stay in Bitter Creek more than a night, but fate had other designs, as it often did in the territories. Injuns. The saloon doors burst open as a wild-eyed ranch hand stumbled in. Apache raid on the Wallace place. They took everything: livestock, supplies. The saloon erupted in shouts and curses. Men grabbed rifles and pistols, the air thick with vengeful threats. Sheriff Donovan, a gray-haired man with a perpetual squint, raised his hands. "Settle down. We'll form a proper posse. No vigilante nonsense." Isaiah remained seated. Apache raids weren't uncommon, but something about this one didn't sit right. The Wallace Ranch was remote, but it wasn't on any traditional Apache hunting grounds. "Wade." Sheriff Donovan approached his table. "You track for the Army once, didn't you?" Isaiah's eyes lifted slowly. "Once. I need men who can read sign. You in or not?" Isaiah considered his empty coffee cup. He had no horse staked outside, no property to defend, no reason to join this fight. "Double Eagle says you're too yellow," jeered a voice from across the saloon. A beefy man with a thick mustache stood grinning. "Heartless Wade's just cold, not brave." Isaiah stood, his movements deliberate. The room fell silent. "I'll ride," he said simply, dropping coins on the table. By dawn, Isaiah was leading a posse of 12 men eastward, following tracks that told a story different from what the ranch hand had described. The tracks were deeper than necessary for raiding parties, suggesting they carried heavy loads. And they weren't heading toward Apache territory but north, toward the Black Hills. "These ain't Apache tracks," he finally announced, dismounting to examine a peculiar pattern in the soil. "The hell they ain't," growled the mustached man. Ellis was his name. "Thompson saw them clear as day." "Thompson saw what he wanted to see," Isaiah replied. "These are shod horses, not ponies. And look there." He pointed to a distinctive boot print. "Army issue." The men exchanged uneasy glances. "You saying white men did this?" asked Donovan. "I'm saying someone wants us chasing Apaches while they head north with Wallace's cattle." Ellis spat. "Maybe you're in on it, trying to throw us off." Isaiah stood, hand casually resting near his holster. "Follow the wrong trail if you want. I'm tracking the thieves." For hours later, they crested a ridge overlooking a shallow valley. Isaiah raised a hand, signaling the posse to halt. Below, 3 wagons circled a small camp. Men in mismatched clothing moved between them, and tied to one wagon were 3 women in traditional Apache dress. "Sweet Jesus," whispered Donovan. "Those are Apache women." Isaiah's eyes narrowed. "And those men aren't Apache." He counted 8 armed men, renegades by the look of them, the kind that fought for neither side but preyed on both. The women were bound, their faces showing the stoic dignity of those who expected death but wouldn't beg. "What's this about?" Ellis hissed. "Why take Indian women?" "Slave traders," Isaiah replied, his voice flat. "They'll sell them in the mining camps up north. Good price for women, no questions asked about where they came from." The men looked shocked. Frontier justice was harsh, but slavery was a line most wouldn't cross. "We need a plan," Donovan said. "We're outnumbered." Isaiah was already checking his rifle. "Circle around. I'll draw their fire from the east ridge. When they're focused on me, come in from the west." "That's suicide," said one man. Isaiah's gaze was steady. "Better me than those women." Before anyone could argue, he was moving through the brush, silent as a mountain lion. The others watched him go, mystified by the man they called Heartless. Isaiah reached the eastern ridge in 20 minutes. From his position, he could see the camp clearly. The Apache women sat in the dirt, hands bound before them. 2 were older, perhaps in their 40s. The third was younger, maybe 20, with a quiet dignity that set her apart. His first shot took out the sentry. His second shattered a coffee pot, sending the renegades scrambling for cover. By his third shot, they were returning fire, just as he'd planned. The posse attacked from the west as arranged, catching the camp in crossfire. The battle was brief but vicious. 2 posse members fell wounded. 4 renegades died before the others surrendered. When the shooting stopped, Isaiah approached the captive women cautiously. The youngest watched him with unreadable dark eyes as he cut their bonds. "Do you speak English?" he asked. She nodded slightly. "Some. You're free now. We'll take you back to your people." She rubbed her wrists, then spoke in measured words. "No people. Village burned 3 days ago. Only us left." Isaiah felt something stir in his chest, an emotion he thought long dead. "What's your name?" "Liliui Lightfoot," she replied. "These are my aunts." Isaiah nodded respectfully to the older women. "I'm Isaiah Wade." "We know who you are," said one of the aunts in accented English. "The man they call Heartless." Isaiah's jaw tightened slightly. Even here, his reputation had preceded him. Sheriff Donovan approached, looking uncomfortable. "Wade, what do we do with them? Can't take Apaches back to town. Folks are riled up enough." Isaiah looked at Liliui, saw the pride and fear warring in her eyes. "They're coming with me," he heard himself say. "I have a claim north of here. They'll be safe until we figure something out." Donovan looked surprised but nodded. "Your funeral." As they prepared to leave, Liliui approached Isaiah. "Why do they call you Heartless?" Isaiah mounted his horse, offering her a hand up. "Because it's easier than knowing the truth." She took his hand, settling behind him on the horse. "And what is truth?" For the first time in years, Isaiah felt the ghost of a smile touch his lips. "I'm still trying to figure that out." The journey to Isaiah's claim took 2 days. He'd barely mentioned it to the men in town because he rarely stayed there. It was a small cabin with a corral and lean-to stable, built in a protected valley with a clear stream running nearby. The women were wary at first, speaking in their language among themselves. But when Isaiah showed them the cabin and told them to make themselves at home, Liliui translated, and the tension eased somewhat. That evening, as Isaiah built a fire outside, Liliui joined him. "My aunts say you are a strange white man," she said, sitting across from him. Isaiah fed another stick to the flames. "They're probably right. You fought in the big war," she observed. Not a question but a statement. Isaiah looked up sharply. How do you know that? She gestured to his left hand, which occasionally trembled when he was tired. The way you hold your hand. My father was at Sand Creek. After, his hand shook the same way. Isaiah stared into the fire. Sand Creek was a massacre, not a battle. So was Shiloh, she replied. Just more white men dying. He looked at her with new respect. You know about the war? I was educated at the mission school before I returned to my people. I learned your history, your language. Her eyes reflected the firelight. I learned white men's ways. Not all white men are the same, Isaiah said quietly. No, she agreed. Some are called heartless, yet save strangers. Over the next weeks, a fragile trust developed. The older women Kimmy and Nita tended the cabin and surroundings, turning the sparse homestead into something that almost felt like a home. They repaired clothing, prepared meals using knowledge of local plants, and kept to themselves. Lily was different. She watched Isaiah, asked questions, shared stories. She was caught between worlds, educated in white ways but devoted to her heritage. Her quiet strength reminded Isaiah of the mountains themselves, unyielding, enduring. One evening as summer faded toward autumn, Isaiah returned from hunting to find Lily skinning a rabbit she had snared. You should teach me to use that, she said, nodding toward his rifle. Isaiah hesitated. Why would you want to learn? Because we cannot stay here forever, she replied simply. When winter comes, you will leave. We must be able to protect ourselves. The thought of leaving hadn't occurred to him, though she was right. He never wintered at the claim, always drifting south when the snow came. I'm not leaving, he found himself saying. Lily's hands stilled on the rabbit. You always leave. Everyone knows this. Not this time. The certainty in his voice surprised even him. That night, a storm rolled in from the mountains. Thunder cracked like rifle fire, and lightning split the sky. Isaiah found Lily standing on the porch, watching the tempest. My father said storms cleanse the spirit, she told him, raising her voice above the wind. They wash away what is no longer needed. Isaiah stood beside her, feeling the rain splatter against his face. What needs washing away? She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the lightning. For me? Fear. For you? Perhaps the name they gave you. Heartless, he murmured. Is it true? She asked. Do you have no heart? Isaiah looked away. I had one once. Left it at Shiloh with half my company. And never found another? Her hand touched his scarred cheek, light as a feather. The touch startled him. No one had willingly touched him in years. Never looked. Perhaps, she said, her voice barely audible above the storm. It found you instead. As autumn painted the valley in gold and crimson, Isaiah found himself changing. He spoke more, slept better. The nightmares that had plagued him since the war came less frequently. And when they did come, he would wake to find Lily sitting beside his bed, humming a gentle melody that chased away the ghosts. Kimmy and Nita watched the transformation with knowing eyes. They spoke in Apache among themselves, occasionally including Lily in conversations that would stop when Isaiah entered the room. They think you are haunted, Lily told him one day as they repaired the corral fence. Not by spirits, but by memories. Isaiah hammered a nail with more force than necessary. They're right. They also think I am foolish, she added, handing him another nail. He paused. For what? For caring about a white man who cannot see what is before him. Isaiah's hammer stopped mid-swing. And what's before me? Lily met his gaze steadily. A future different from your past. Before he could respond, hoofbeats approached from the valley entrance. Isaiah instinctively reached for his rifle, positioning himself between Lily and the approaching riders. For men rode into view, led by Ellis from the posse. "Well, well," Ellis called, dismounting. Heartless Wade playing house with his Apache squaws. The men spread out slightly, hands near their weapons. Isaiah recognized the stance of men looking for trouble. "State your business and move on," Isaiah said, his voice returning to the cold tone he'd used in town. Ellis spat. "Town's got a new sheriff. One who thinks Indians belong on reservations or in the ground." "These women are under my protection," Isaiah replied. "They've done nothing wrong. That ain't how some folks see it. Apache killed the Buford boy last week. People want blood." "Not from these women," Isaiah said firmly. "Ride out now, Ellis." Ellis' hand hovered near his holster. "We're taking them in, Wade. Step aside." The familiar coldness settled over Isaiah, the clarity that came before violence. "No." Ellis drew first, but Isaiah was faster. His shot caught Ellis in the shoulder, spinning him backward. The other men reached for their guns, but froze when Isaiah's rifle leveled at them. "Next one's center mass," Isaiah warned. "Drag him out of here." The men hesitated, then collected their wounded friend and retreated, cursing vehemently. When they were gone, Isaiah turned to find Lily watching him, her expression unreadable. "They will return," she said. "With more men." Isaiah nodded grimly. "We need to prepare." That night, as Kimmy and Nita slept, Isaiah and Lily sat by the fire planning. "We could leave," she suggested. "Go north to Montana Territory." Isaiah shook his head. "Winter's coming. We'd never make it with supplies for 4. "Then we fight," she said simply. "No." His voice was firm. "I won't risk your lives. It is not your decision to make." Her eyes flashed. "We are not helpless." "I know that," Isaiah replied, frustration edging his voice. "But I can't. I won't watch more people die." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "This is why they call you heartless. Not because you feel nothing, but because you feel too much." Isaiah stared into the fire, unable to meet her gaze. "I watched my entire company die at Shiloh, boys I'd promised to bring home safe. After that, I swore I'd never be responsible for another life. Yet here you are," she said softly. "Responsible for 3. "I didn't plan this," he admitted. "Life rarely follows plans." Lily moved closer, her shoulder touching his. "My people believe that spirits guide our paths. Perhaps they guided you to us." "I don't believe in spirits." "What do you believe in, Isaiah Wade?" He looked at her then, really looked at her. In the firelight, her face was serene, expectant. He realized with sudden clarity that sometime during these weeks, she had become essential to him like air or water. "I'm starting to believe in second chances," he said quietly. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. "Then believe in this one." The kiss that followed was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a demand. When he responded, it was with years of loneliness and newfound hope. For a moment, the world beyond their fire ceased to exist. When they separated, Lily's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "The man they call heartless has a heart after all." Isaiah touched her cheek. "Maybe I just needed someone to remind me where I left it." The expected trouble came 3 days later. Sheriff Burke, the new lawman, rode in with 8 deputies and a piece of paper he claimed was an order to remove the Apache women to the reservation at Fort Sill. Isaiah stood on his porch, rifle in hand but pointed downward. "Those reservations are death sentences." Burke, a heavy-set man with cold eyes, shrugged. "Not my concern. I've got orders." "I have rights," Isaiah countered. "This is my land, legally claimed and registered." "Your rights don't extend to harboring hostiles," Burke replied. "Step aside, Wade. Don't want bloodshed here." Isaiah's mind raced. 9 armed men against 1. The women were hidden in a cave behind the property, his contingency plan, but fighting would only end one way. "Let me see the order," he said, playing for time. As Burke reached for the document, hoofbeats sounded from the ridge. Isaiah glanced up to see riders approaching, at least a dozen, led by Sheriff Donovan. "Burke," Donovan called. "Stand down." The new sheriff turned, confused. "Donovan? You've no authority here anymore." "Maybe not as sheriff," Donovan agreed, dismounting. "But as U.S. Marshal, I've plenty." He produced a badge and papers. "These women are witnesses in a federal investigation into slave trading. Touch them, and you'll answer to the federal court." Burke's face reddened. "This is horseshit, Donovan." "Maybe so," Donovan replied amiably. "But my horseshit outranks yours. Now ride out before I decide to investigate why the new sheriff of Bitter Creek is so interested in removing witnesses to a federal crime." The standoff lasted another tense minute before Burke signaled his men to withdraw. When they were gone, Donovan approached Isaiah. "Had a telegram from the territorial governor. Seems someone's been making noise about slave traders operating in Wyoming. Got me a temporary marshal's commission to investigate." Isaiah's brow furrowed. "Who contacted the governor?" "Fella named Clayton Wallace, the rancher who was supposedly raided. Turns out he wasn't even at his ranch that day. When he got back and heard the story, he smelled something wrong." Isaiah nodded slowly. "Thank you." Donovan waved it away. "Don't thank me yet. This buys time, not permanence. Those women still don't have a safe place here." "They do with me," Isaiah said firmly. Donovan studied him. "You know, I never believed that heartless nonsense. Man doesn't risk his life for strangers if he's got no heart." He glanced toward the cabin. "But you might want to consider making your arrangement more official. Might solve some problems." After Donovan left, Isaiah brought the women back from their hiding place. As Kimmy and Nita returned to the cabin, Lily lingered with him near the corral. "What did he mean by official?" she asked. Isaiah leaned against the fence post. "He meant marriage." Lily's eyes widened slightly. "Between us?" "Yes. Is that what you want?" Isaiah looked out over the valley, autumn fading as the first frost approached. "I never thought about wanting anything permanent before. Just survival day to day. And now," her voice was carefully neutral. He turned to her. "Now I can't imagine this place without you in it. Can't imagine my life without you in it." "Is that a proposal, Isaiah Wade?" A smile tugged at her lips. "It's not very romantic," he admitted. "Romance is a white concept," she replied, moving closer. "Apache marriages are about partnership, strength together." "Is that a yes, Lily Lightfoot?" Her answer was in her kiss, firm, certain, full of promise. They were married 2 weeks later by a traveling preacher who didn't ask questions about the unusual union. Kimmy and Nita witnessed the ceremony, their initial reservations giving way to cautious approval as Isaiah's devotion to their niece became undeniable. Winter settled over the valley, snow blanketing the land in pristine white. Inside the cabin, warmth prevailed. Isaiah taught Lily to read from the few books he owned. She taught him Apache words and stories. Together, they planned for spring, expanding the cabin, planting crops, building a life neither had thought possible. At night, wrapped in each other's arms, Isaiah would sometimes wake from his old nightmares. But now, instead of reaching for his gun, he would reach for his wife. "You were calling out again," Lily would whisper, stroking his hair. "Same dream," he would reply. "Shiloh. The boy's dying. They are at peace now," she would remind him. "And you are here with me." Gradually, the nightmares came less frequently. The tremor in his hand steadied. The coldness that had been his armor for so long melted away, replaced by something he had never expected to find in this harsh territory: happiness. Spring brought new life to the valley. Wild flowers carpeted the meadows, and the stream ran full with mountain snowmelt. Kimmy and Nita established a garden that flourished under their expert care. Isaiah built an extension to the cabin, with a room especially for them. News from town reached them occasionally. The slave traders had been tried and hanged. Sheriff Burke had moved on after certain financial improprieties came to light. Donovan had returned to his regular duties, but his brief tenure as marshal had brought positive changes for relations with local tribes. One warm evening as summer approached, Isaiah and Liliui sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the valley gold. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her abdomen. "Our family will grow before winter comes again." Isaiah's breath caught. The familiar fear of loss, of failing those who depended on him, flashed briefly. But it was quickly replaced by a wave of joy so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. "A child," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "A new beginning," she corrected, smiling. "For all of us." That night, as Liliui slept beside him, Isaiah stepped outside to look at the stars. The vastness of the sky had once made him feel insignificant, his troubles meaningless in the grand scheme. Now it felt like possibility endless and bright. A soft footfall announced Kimmy's presence. The older woman rarely sought him out alone, and Isaiah turned, curious. "My sister and I will leave when the child comes," she said without preamble. "Return to what remains of our people." Isaiah frowned. "You don't have to leave. This is your home too." Kimmy shook her head. "A family needs its own space. Besides, there are Apache children who need to learn our ways. We will teach them as we taught Liliui." "She will miss you." "She has found her path," Kimmy replied, "as all must do." "Thank you," Isaiah said simply, "for trusting me with her." Kimmy's weathered face creased in a rare smile. "We did not trust at first, but even old eyes can see truth eventually." She gestured to the stars. "The spirits were wise to bring her to the man called Heartless." "I don't think anyone calls me that anymore," he said. "No," she agreed. "Now they will call you Father." The prediction proved true sooner than expected. Word spread about the former gunfighter who had married an Apache woman and defended her people. Travelers sometimes appeared at their homestead, those seeking direction, or refuge, or simply a place to rest before continuing their journey. Isaiah and Liliui turned no one away. Their home became known as a place of peace in a territory still marked by conflict. When their daughter was born, a strong, healthy girl with her mother's dark eyes and her father's determined chin, they named her Hope. True to their word, Kimmy and Nita departed after helping with the birth, but they returned each summer to spend time with their grandniece. The valley flourished under the care of its unlikely family. Where once there had been only a rough cabin, a thriving homestead grew with fruit trees, grazing cattle, and eventually more children. Years passed. The frontier changed. Towns grew into cities, territories became states, and the Wild West slowly yielded to civilization. Through it all, the legend of Heartless Wade faded into history, replaced by stories of Isaiah Wade, the man who found his heart when he saved 3 Apache women and married the quiet one. On their 20th anniversary, Isaiah and Liliui stood on the same porch where they had watched countless sunsets together. Their children were nearly grown, their homestead prosperous, their love deeper than either could have imagined possible in those uncertain early days. "Do you ever think about who you were before?" Liliui asked, her head resting against his shoulder. Isaiah considered the question. "Sometimes. Feels like a different man lived that life." "He did," she replied. "The man I love was born the day you chose to help strangers who had nothing to offer in return." Isaiah looked out over their valley, and felt the familiar swell of gratitude that had become his constant companion. "You're wrong about that," he said softly. You had everything to offer. I just didn't know I needed it until I found you." As twilight deepened into night, they remained together on the porch, their silhouettes merging into one shadow against the lamplight spilling from the home they had built not just with timber and nails, but with courage, sacrifice, and a love that had transformed a man once called Heartless into the beating heart of a family that defied the odds of its time.